You know, a service is worth paying attention to when the person behind it has 40 patents, a PhD, an MBA, and has led global giants like IBM, Infosys, and Wipro. That's Shaji Farooq for you, a transformation architect who spent nearly 4 decades turning complexity into clarity across industries. Now, as CEO of Chazey Partners, he's back with something bold. FlexBPO, a nearshore delivery model that promises agility without compromise. Shaji, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you.
It's good to see you, and happy to be here and talk about some of the exciting things ahead of us.
Before we get into the heavy stuff, Shaji, here, 40 patents, global roles, 3 degrees. Be honest, do you ever get tired of filling out the experience section on LinkedIn?
See, this is the one thing, right? This applies to everybody, by the way. Those are laurels that you gathered one point in time. You can't rest on them. Because times change and you have to evolve. I can tell you, it's been about 40 years since I got my PhD. And, while science fundamentally doesn't change, there are a lot of things that change, technology changes. So there's a huge evolution. I think that is true for every industry. Okay. And that to me is the exciting part, right? Maintaining status quo, not so much.
Okay, jokes aside, your career has been all about navigating complexity, whether it's scaling operations across continents or driving transformation at enterprise scale. And now with FlexBPO, it feels like you're tackling one of the industry's biggest elephants in the room. So let's start with the big picture. BPO industry has been around for decades and has been enabling tremendous savings driven by labor cost arbitrage. Yet, many would argue that it hasn't evolved much over that period of time, and neither has it been transformational. What do you think are the challenges facing this industry?
Yeah, I think it's important to take a historical perspective, right? How did BPO evolve? It actually first started with the IT outsourcing revolution, where it was a model that really started delivering big benefits rather quickly. And obviously, the next obvious question was, if IT can do this, why not processes, right? And IT, fortunately, is a different animal, right? It does not have to be synchronous. The service does not have to be synchronous, right? Which means it does not have to have interactions with people at the same time. And the IT model also evolved slightly differently, right? There was an offshoring component and there was an on-site team also that stood with the client and kind of was the buffer between the offshore teams and on-site. And the work for IT, incidentally, did not happen in off-shift hours. It happened in day shift hours, right? Because of the model that it was. Now, when you look at business processes, by definition, a lot of things that happen when business processes are not batch oriented, right? Which is true for IT. You can build a whole bunch of code, test it, send it across, let the clients feel it. It doesn't work like that for BPO. In BPO, everything is real time, right? It has to happen in real time. So ergo, if the clients are operating in the US hours and you're working from a foreshore location that is 10 plus hours away in time zones, you're going to have people working in nighttime. And that, interestingly, is where the problems start. And so often I get asked the question, so is it the time zones that's the problem, right? And the answer should be no, right? Because if people are willing to work night shift hours and they're doing a great job and there are no issues with that, what is the issue with time zones? There should be no issue with time zones, right? Whereas if you look further down though, the issue is not with the time zones alone. The issue is the fact that you have to depend on night shift workers. And we all know that most people do not want to work night shifts, right? They would prefer to work like most normal human beings during the daytime hours. Right. So it takes a lot out of them. And the younger crowd that joins BPO services does quite well because it's exciting. There's good money in it. And they have very few other ties and responsibilities. So it's much more easy to manage night shift working hours when your own personal commitments are very different, right? You're at a different stage of life. Now, turn the clock forward, and as people get further in their careers, they rise in their ranks, they do well. They have families, they have other commitments, and night shift is not necessarily the best way for them to operate. So you start seeing a whole bunch of other problems. So again, it's very important to make the distinction between time zone differences and the effect that time zone differences has, which is asking for people to work night shifts, and there are the problems that come with working in the night shift. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Yeah.
So I understand about the night shift, but in your experience, where are clients truly feeling the pain? Are there certain types of processes or operations where the traditional model simply fails to deliver what modern enterprises need?
Yeah, absolutely right. See, if there are if the tasks and the processes are simple, right? They are very amenable to various kinds of technology interventions. So you can, to a large degree, even though you don't have to rely, without having to rely on sophisticated talent, you can enable those processes, and they work quite well. And it's true. In fact, the success of Indian BPO industry has been exactly that, right? 80% of the processes that were outsourced actually work really well. Of course, behind the curtains, it may be a different story, right? You may have to, you still have problems of attrition, even in the junior ranks, etc. So you have to build buffers. You have to have people who are doubling up and training in some critical functions. But it may sound like smoke and mirrors, but no, it's been managed. It's a process. It's very well defined. And so as long as the processes are relatively simple, do not have major impacts when things fail on upstream or downstream processes, do not have a major financial impact or consequences because of that, one can still run them. So despite working in a night shift and with all its accompanying problems, 80% of it actually works very well, right? It's no surprise that the BPO industry in places like India and Philippines has been successful, right? And it's not a model that's going away. But now the obvious question, what about the remaining 20%, right? Therein lies the problem. Okay, that is the biggest source of aggravation to clients, right? They just can't seem to get over the repeated problems and issues that occur with 20% of those processes, right? And this has been going on for years. So you end up at you are at a stage now where clients come to us, and we'll talk a little bit about what we really do, right? Where we started and what we did. But they come to us and they tell us about, how do I get over this, right? I like for sure BPO. I know what the advantages are. We have availed of them. We have benefited from them, but we are living the pain every day of our life for the 20%, right? Yeah.
So, I mean, this comes up a lot. I mean, you're talking about these challenges, but despite these challenges, many companies continue to maintain the status quo, despite underperformance and absence of transformation. What's holding them back from making a change? Is it fear, cost, complexity, or just lack of better options?
A little bit of everything, but that's the fear. No, fear is long gone. It's in the rear view mirror, actually, because, the biggest step they took was outsourcing to a far shore location. That was when the real fear was, because things could completely break down. And that was managed beautifully. I mean, they did a great job in transitioning. People actually moved from on-site to offshore locations to work side by side and enable people. But once it took off and built momentum, that was not an issue. Fear, I don't think, is the issue, right? Fear was the issue, then GCC should not happen, right? Because GCC is also a change, right? You're moving from a provider of services to, creating an organization that you run 10 and a half time zones away, right? So I don't think it's a fear. It's a lack of viable options, I think, is the bigger issue, right? So if you look at, the obvious question then is, why are GCCs so popular, right? You still have the 10 and a half hours difference. And my answer to that is bingo. Yeah, that's exactly the problem. It's not it's not about operating in same time zones. You're still stuck with operating with night shift workers. It doesn't matter whether you completely control it. So it solves the problem of control, compliance, risk, things of that nature that you worry about. But GCCs do not solve the most fundamental problem, which is the reliance and dependence on night shift workers. That isn't going away, right?
Right.
So it really comes down to absence of something else that can take its place. GCCs can take over that 80%, no problem, right? Because if the traditional providers can do it, you can do it as well. And GCCs have ways of doing it. They're willing to take on a little more cost for better, more controllable, more predictable service. So that's not the issue. So the issue really becomes the dependence, the reliance on night shift labor when you're operating time zones away. That is the problem that needs to be solved. And the solutions for that were few and far between thus far. Of course, till now, right? That's exactly why we are talking about this today, is that there are options. In fact, if I think it's probably appropriate for me to talk about it now because, we, Chazey Partners, our DNA is operations transformation. We are an operations transformation consulting company. That's how we grew. That's what we have done for the past 2 decades, right? We have worked for clients to transform their operations, create efficiencies, restructure their organizations, relook at every aspect of how they operate. I'm talking about back office operations here, right? And then we have made recommendations. Sometimes they could be creating a shared services organization, which, as you know, many people have done, or a global business services organization, again, which many people have done. The key, though, that we realized all along, always, is that you cannot treat every client as the previous client that you worked with. Every client has unique challenges. Some have an international footprint. Some have acquired a bunch of companies that they're kind of loosely stitched together, right? Everybody's pain points when it comes to managing operations does depend on how they originated. Okay, so you cannot say I have a standard one size fits all solution for everybody. I mean, we don't do that. We are consultants. Our job is to look at your problem, understand it, assess it, right? Design something that is fit for purpose, and then help you deploy it, and even help you build it out and establish an organization or restructure an organization that we will take you through. And we have been doing that for close to 2 decades and very successfully. In fact, most of our clients are repeat clients. They love what we do for them. But in a sense, though, what the advantage it gives us is it makes us unbiased. We are consultants. We're brought in to provide an unbiased assessment. And that is our DNA. That isn't going away. So when I talk, the next thing I will obviously touch upon is, what is this FlexBPO then, right? Actually, FlexBPO is about providing a solution for this conundrum that exists, about how to overcome complexity in processes, challenging processes, things that demand immediate response, things that they're very time sensitive. The cost of failure is very high, both from a reputation standpoint and a financial standpoint. Think about it. If you're doing accounts payable and you approve the wrong payment, what do you think has happened? That money is gone out the door. Yeah, it's once you get it, once it leaves your doors, getting it back is very difficult. Okay, you might as well write it off at that point. So the cost of failures here are very, very high. So our clients came to us and said, you have done operations before, right? And here is the problem we face. We have had very successful outsourcing results, but one part of it, 20% of it just doesn't work. Help us fix this problem. And in fact, the conversation started with, we want to move this closer to home, right? We want to move it closer to home. We don't have to rely so much on night shift operations and things like that, and all these challenges, the attrition, the poor availability of talent, the biggest attrition happening in experience ranks, the constant erosion of knowledge, and almost impossible to, under these conditions, it's impossible to make transformation happen. Okay, because transformation depends on experience and learning that's happened year after year. When you have in some levels 100% of the people leaving the company and you're backfilling them, where does all that knowledge and experience go? It's gone through the door. And making transformation happen under those conditions is extremely difficult, right? So that 20% problem remains. So when we talk to our clients, we said, okay, we are consultants. We'll come in, we'll assess as we always have done. We will look at the whole thing. We'll redesign things. We'll tell you what the choke points are, and we'll help you fix the problem. This is how it came to us. But then they said, oh, by the way, very important. A lot of our experience has been in Latin America, right? It's not like we have done consulting work only in North America or in Europe. We have done a majority, and I wouldn't say majority, but a lot of our consulting, almost 50%, was done in Latin America. So we understand the Latin America market, the Latin America clients, their priorities, the politics, the individual needs of individual constraints in each country, the availability of talent, all of that we understand because we have worked there. In fact, we have established captives for our clients in Latin America. And we have done that several times over the last 2 decades, right? So I think there's a lot to be said for that. And as we went through this conversation, it kind of started with, can you help build a captive for us, right? And we said, sure. And we thought that was a great idea too, by the way. And as we went through it, and as we went through the process of discovery, we realized that what they want is not complete control. They think they want complete control. But what they want is all the benefits of control, but not having to own every aspect of the operations. Hence the concept of FlexBPO. On one end, you have total outsourcing, which is basically zero control, right? To a large degree. Yes, you get reports. Yes, you can question, you can challenge, you can impose penalties, you can do that. But problems continue, right? On the other extreme is total captive. And total captive will give you that, but it takes a lot out of the organization. You have to personally run it. You may not get the benefits of scale. All of these are issues. So as we went through this, our clients in fact said, we want to be involved in recruiting all people, right? They wanted to be involved in recruiting everybody. And we told them why. They said, no, because I think the problem is we are not hiring the right talent. I said, okay, let's start there. And they started in getting involved in recruiting. After the first 2 months, their answer was actually, you know what, you're right. We don't need to do this for every level, every person being hired. But some critical roles we want to be involved. We let them set the needle to that. So going from complete control on recruiting to I want partial control, we said, fine, we will adjust the model accordingly, right? This applies to the premises, the technology. You can go through all day-to-day operations, managing people's expectations. It may seem simple, but it's not. Okay, and also the other thing is. The people we're talking about are people in Latin American countries. There is a cultural aspect to it, like it or not. Yeah. And in sometimes these things are best handled by locals themselves. So people like the local leaders that we bring in. So I think after going through all of this, the realization is we want something captive-like, but not as constrained and as so tightly controlled as a captive would be. So what it essentially came down to is we want the best of both worlds. We want to operate in the spectrum between a captive and completely outsource. And oh, by the way, that may not uniformly be the case for everything we do with you. In finance, we may want to be more control, more captive-like, or in HR. We may want to set the needle in the middle, or maybe over a period of time more towards less control. So even at a functional level, there are going to be differences. Within the company over a period of time, there are going to be differences, right? Their businesses evolve, their markets evolve, their clients evolve, their needs evolve. So as they evolve, they wanted to have that flexibility. Ergo, the term FlexBPO came into existence. Right? So flex is a very important part of it. Second is no night shift dependence, right? Guess what? We operate in the same time zone in Latin America for all practical purposes. An hour here or an hour there, right? They're close by, physical proximity. If I want to take a plane and visit the center, spend time with people, easily done. I don't have to travel 10 and a half time zones away or whatever, right? To just go visit a center, even if it's my own captive, right? So I think there are a number of these things that become very apparent as you go through this journey. And as we evolve, we are seeing more and more clients saying, this seems to be a great model It's kind of a hybrid in some ways. And I know hybrid is a term that's been used in many, many different ways, but it's a hybrid in terms of teams from the clients, their own employees, potentially teams that belong to far shore outsourcing providers, traditional BPOs, and teams from near shore centers, which can operate anywhere in the continuum of captive all the way to the other end, right? Which is, completely outsourced. That is, I think the dovetailing of all of this and the coming together of all of this is seen as a huge plus point.
Right.
Okay. Now, I think there is also another question there, actually. Why can't the traditional BPO players do the same thing in Latin America? Theoretically, yes. But like I said, the nuances that exist as you go from country to country, the nuances that exist because of language, challenges in language, etc. Understanding where talent is available, understanding what are the unique features of each geography. Is it too crowded? Is the total pool of talent available adequate? What kind of talent for what kind of function is easily available? Can you readily get experienced people? Is English speaking, which is a very important thing, by the way. So English speaking abilities are also something one has to assess. So when we look at it as a consulting company, we will do a complete assessment and show you which locations make the most sense for you. In fact, there might be some things you do that might make better sense from another location than other things that you do. So we will constantly look at that. And the last but not the least is we will constantly look at opportunities for transformation, because that's our DNA. That's what we have always done. So we will look at improving things constantly.
So talking about transformation there, Shaji, I mean, we've heard a lot about that. And I know I've understood that FlexBPO is not just outsourcing with a new name. How does FlexBPO embed transformation into delivery from day one?
So again, this goes back to how you approach a problem, right? If a client says, here's a process, don't tell us about how broken it is, just lift and shift it, because that is challenge enough right now. And you say, yes, okay, we'll do that. And then you fall into that rut and you can never get out of it. It becomes very difficult, right? Because you've invested so much in doing something that was wrong to begin with, or not perfect to begin with, and you put it into action and waited too long. Sometimes you can literally lift and shift, but with a very clear mandate, agreed upon mandate, that we will start transformation soon after. That is possible. Okay. But if you get into a comfort zone with just lifting and shifting, breaking out of it always is going to have some problems. Okay. So our approach is going to be look at continuous transformation. Okay. We can start at day one incrementally, the low hanging fruit, and then we can take on the more challenging tasks as we all become familiar and comfortable and we are already working well. Then we can take on the more appropriate tasks. And again, transformation truly requires a practitioner who understands transformation. It's not an afterthought. It's not something I bolt on afterwards. It is that mindset that looks critically, evaluates everything you do, right? That I think is a very big differerentiator. To me, FlexBPO would be nothing if it were not for the transformation capabilities that come with it. In fact, it is serendipitous. I mean, I guess sometimes you don't always design. Sometimes it's good to luck out as well, right? We started as a consulting company, started doing transformation. It's in our blood, and now it is just it bolts on. It dovetails so well with the service side of it. We now see that as two sides of the same coin. I won't separate them. I won't go to a client and say, I do transformation and transformation only. Or I won't go and say, I'll just outsource your services and I'll do that only. I will always talk of both of these things in the same breath. And I think that is a big differentiator that many other companies just cannot offer. I know traditional BPO players who have approached us and said, one of our big challenges is we talk transformation, but we cannot do it because we actually don't have the talent, and neither is it in our DNA to really look at transformation. So everything we do is incremental. It's incremental improvements. Transformation to me is quantum change. Transformation is not incremental improvements, right? Big difference, right? Painting the walls in your house is incremental improvement. However, remodeling the entire room from the ground up, getting new flooring, right? Changing all the bathrooms, that is transformational because you're redesigning it for purpose. And I think that difference is what we bring, that nobody else actually at this stage, I believe, can do what we can do. And I mean credibly. Yeah.
You previously spoken about talent, right? Hiring right talent for the clients. So how does FlexBPO attract or retain talent differently compared to traditional models?
Well, first of all, retaining talent is not as much of a challenge for several reasons, right? One is, like I said, no night shift operations. Okay. It fits in naturally within people's lives, right? I don't have to go to work when my kids go to bed, right? And come back the next morning and sleep the entire day, right? I don't have to do that. Automatically, there is that longevity. Secondly, there is an intimate knowledge, contact, and interaction with clients who sit across the border, so to say, right? Literally within the same time zone. Maybe a couple of hours away, maybe 3 hours away, it doesn't matter. It's literally you pick up a phone and you can have a conversation. You don't have to think of what time. It's the time that you're working, right? It's the daytime. Right. So I think these are things that are very satisfying to employees, right? They don't see a constant flux of people leaving. Think about it, right? You're working with, your peers. You're depending on them for something. And a few weeks later, that person decides to leave. What does it do to your job and to your stability? It's very stressful for employees. So, if you put all of this together, sure, there are individual needs of employees that every business has to meet, right? They have expectations on their compensations. They have expectations on their benefits, medical and other benefits, etc. All of these are par for the course. Everybody has them. But it goes beyond that. And I think that beyond is what traditional BPO fails to deliver. How do you have 100% attrition, 100% annual attrition rate? How do you explain that, right? Nobody likes to just join a job and leave, okay? We all desire stability, right? And the fact that it occurs, is itself evidence that you don't have happy employees. For whatever the reasons, we can discuss that to death, but whether we agree on the reasons or not, the fact of the matter is employees are not happy, whereas we are not seeing that in Latin America.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. We come to our last question, Shaji. At the end of the day, what does success really look like for a client working with FlexBPO?
I want our clients to be ecstatic. Okay, I want our clients to see transparency. They need to be able to pull aside and look anywhere they want. They should be feel free to take a flight, come to the location, spend a week, meet the people, walk the floors, get to know people on a personal level. And by the way, that does so many things. First, there is an automatic trust that builds. Next time you don't need to see them across on a screen even. You could just pick up the phone and talk because you already know the person. It does a heck of a lot for our employees because those employees are also interacting with real clients, real time, and they feel like they're a part of the client's organization. That is important. They don't feel like outsiders. They feel like they belong. And I think that is very important. That is hard to replicate when you're doing traditional BPO. And all the other things, just the sheer level of attrition, ongoing attrition, the constant changing, the constant flux, that does a number on people's mind. And forget about transformation. In those situations, transformation is the last thing on your mind. It is how do I keep the lights on and keep running and not have a client holding a gun to my head because something has failed again. Right? Yeah. That is the biggest priority. Transformation, no.
Thank you, Shaji. With that, we come to an end. It's been really insightful having you here and learning more about FlexBPO and more to come.